following program contains the views and opinions of the hosts, speakers, and participants. They do not reflect the policies of the producers, advisors, and advertisers of AU Paws Radio, including Adelphi University's Board of Trustees, administrative faculty, or its affiliates. Paws web radio station encourages freedom of speech but does not endorse any specific viewpoints or messages. Listener discretion is advised, especially for potentially sensitive or controversial topics. Dear readers, I hope this episode finds you doing wonderful. My name is Annabelle Ali, and I'm your host here on Love Letters. I want to start us off by telling you all that you are in for quite the treat. Because this episode is our first true episode, I've pulled out all the stops. Today's episode is an interview with my very good friend, musician, singer, songwriter, Roman Bula, musical alias Wild Santino. Very exciting. Roman, hi, I'm so excited to get to talk to you about your work today. How are you doing?
Hi, Annabelle. I'm doing good. I woke up pretty late. I feel rested, drink coffee. I'm energized, and yeah, I'm chilling.
I'm so glad to hear that. All right, well, today's episode is titled Dear Pluviophiles. A pluviophile is someone who loves and finds peace of mind in the rain. The reason why we've chosen this title is because the work that we're going to be discussing today is Roman's most recent album, I Love the Rain. Phenomenal album, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. I had a lot of fun making it, so I guess we'll talk a little bit about it in depth.
Yeah, I'm so excited. All right. So, Roman, why don't you tell us a little bit about the album? Why'd you choose to name it I Love the Rain? And what kind of person or audience do you feel this album might really resonate with?
Well, it was kind of like an idea I had very early on during my freshman year of college, because I really felt kind of isolated and like starting over in such a new place. And to me, I always have love the rain, literally. And it was just such a simple phrase that has always gone through my head whenever I'm like just chilling at home or observing how beautiful these overcast days are. And in kind of that isolated field and environment that I was in for so long during these first semesters and classes and stuff like that, it was always just kind of the sense of comfort to kind of be able to just sit back and watch how beautiful like the rain and how beautiful nature was. Even if I wasn't necessarily like doing anything productive at the time, that I felt that I was moving towards anything.
So you felt like the rain kind of matched how you were feeling on the inside maybe, and made you feel like, okay, since it's not sunny outside, it's okay for me to like relax and kind of think a little deeper today.
It was nice to just slow down for once after such like feeling like I always had to do something. And then even when I wasn't, it was kind of like a little melancholy feeling, but like we'll talk about that later too.
We definitely will. But yeah, I could definitely see that. So what was your process like when writing this album? And you kind of told us a little bit about that already, but like what was life like leading up to producing it, during writing it, and what kind of feelings do you maybe have toward the time that you wrote it?
It was definitely a very turbulent time. Not necessarily like anything bad happened. It was just a lot of people that I cared about were leaving. A lot of people that I had known for so long were leaving, and it was kind of jarring to me because I had always tried to like pride myself on the fact that like I'm okay with things changing, or that I'm very used to things being adaptable and that I can morph into multiple like situations and outcomes. But I think for some reason, seeing people that you kind of like have gone on this journey with or spent so much time with kind of eventually leave your life left like a very distinct impact on me.
Yeah.
And like I said, that to me the rain was something that had always been with me, even through like childhood. Even like my earliest memories are going in the rain with my grandmother. And I think that's why I clung on to that idea so heavily, was that it was kind of this thing that transcended the ability to like be fixated or leave and not leave it, and it was just kind of always there. The rain is like always omnipresent in some way, because it's a part of nature, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and that's like extremely comforting, knowing that it was there, your whole childhood and literally since you were born, and then you still have that now, even during a time when like almost everything else is not consistent. And I know that, so the album is 5 songs, it's 15 minutes long, but that's including the intro.
Yeah.
And in the intro you kind of do talk about the rain and how it's connected to your relationship with your grandma and your childhood and your upbringing and stuff. And it's also connected to the album art, right?
Yeah.
So, like I was saying, it kind of was really present in the intro, but it was also present in the cover art. Is there anything you want to like talk about in terms of the album cover?
Yeah, I worked with a great artist. I think from what I remember, her name was like Lainey Dulev, I'm pretty sure, and she makes these beautiful, like, very cottagecore looking like portraits and like ideas, and I really felt drawn to it because it kind of felt like that entire period of my life was very like I keep saying this, but isolated. And I felt like I was kind of, even though like literally we're here in the city, I felt like I was in this own, like my own wilderness kind of, because I wouldn't really venture out that much aside from like certain events and obligations, and it felt very much like I was just kind of day by day doing what I had to. And I think I was kind of reaching towards this idea of like looking back on the idea of life didn't always feel like this. Life didn't even feel like this kind of like obligation to show up to certain things, or that there was this much pressure to succeed in certain areas of my life. And it was really kind of I wanted it to be kind of a throw, kind of like flashback almost, because that's why they're kind of like ghostly figures of parts of me, like my dog and my grandma, that there is no sense of like urgency to enjoy these things, or like there is no sense of like I have to be here. It's just
you were
like,
able to just exist.
It just is, and it's like, this is awesome.
Yeah. And I don't really think that we ever thought to appreciate that when life did kind of feel like that when you're younger.
Yeah.
And not everyone has that luxury though. Like
right.
that was definitely a luxury. But so what I wanted to ask was, what kind of person or audience do you really kind of feel like this album will resonate with? And that's like something that we're going to talk about throughout the rest of this episode. But you already kind of touched on feelings of isolation, and that's how you felt. Do you think that kind of, I think so, but do you think that that's translated to anyone who listens to it?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of almost like desperation to slow down in a lot of those songs, because even thematically from what I've done in the past, this is very slow. I tried to incorporate like a lot of folk acoustic elements, and I feel like there's a lot of people in the world where, because of whatever, however you want to say it, because of like capitalism and this incessant need to kind of just keep moving towards something, it can feel like we're never really at a place where we just kind of like stop and appreciate what we have. Because I feel like a lot of parts of my life that I end up yearning for or reflecting the most are because of that, or because I was so invested or heavily needing to move towards some idea or some project that I kind of didn't fully appreciate the people and things happening around me. And then when it's over, I'm like, oh, I want to go back to that, but that's gone. And then by the time I realize that, there's something happening in my life currently that I could be putting more energy towards or thought, and be like, wow, this is something I appreciate right now.
Yeah. And I think that it's really important to kind of remember that feeling of, that you remember this feeling, and then kind of understand that maybe it is important to slow down, and kind of prioritize that. So what was your process like while writing the album, and what was life kind of like leading up to producing it, during writing it, and like, can you compare that to how you feel now, like the feeling you have now looking back?
Yeah, definitely. It was super quiet. I think that's one of the big, it was super quiet and melancholy. I didn't feel like that good. I didn't even feel good making it, honestly. there were a lot of, because for me, art has always worked in this way where it is able to transfer your emotions and ideas into some kind of like medium where it doesn't bother you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of it wasn't like that. It was actually like very frustrating to make, and also because I just felt like I wanted to have it as a tangible listening experience. But it was also my first time using all these new recording techniques and using acoustic instruments, and I was very unfamiliar, so it was kind of this very like aggravating process of starting something and then really liking the idea or like where something is going to turn out, but also, you know, being scared almost that this is not enough, that this isn't good enough. And it was kind of like that, like it was just kind of this like very like thick almost like mud that I had to like wade through to kind of just get to a point where it's like, okay, that's good enough, or like I like that a lot. And even when it was kind of, it wasn't very triumphant. It was just kind of like, oh, that's there now. But looking back now, it's I think that needed to happen almost. I think that there's so many things where we look back and we kind of rationalize like bad things to cope with the way things are now. But I'm glad that I ended up having such a like hollow experience of what college could be and what you know adulthood would look like to compare to like now, where I think like everyone in my life is a very like actualized and amazing person, like, and be like, it doesn't, you know what I mean, like it doesn't have to, this isn't, growing up doesn't equate to just being miserable all the time. Like there's so many good parts about it.
There is an alternative, and you kind of knew what to look for after feeling what could be if you just kept going in that direction. But during that time, I guess I kind of want to ask, did you feel any kind of pressure when you started writing it? Did you feel any kind of pressure to turn your, I don't want to say suffering, but yeah, like your rough time into something beautiful, into art? Because I know that as artists, sometimes we feel that need to do that.
Yeah. It definitely, I think what I came out of the, like, I Love the Rain era with was, like, that I kind of need to be able to just experience life, like, as just an experience. Like, because for me, whenever something happens, my output ended up being, since, like, high school, to create something from it, to kind of be like, oh, this validated why it happened. Like, this wasn't for nothing, because I'm, like, a firm believer of, like, things just happen. Things are kind of, like, absurdly always happening. This doesn't, like, mean that they happen for any reason other than, like, what you end up coming out with it. So I think I needed to do it, like, one last time to, like, get it out of me and to just be able to move on from, like, all those things that were bothering me. But also, like, because there were things, you know, like, life is life. Things happen after, and there were things that still bothered me, but I didn't feel the need to make a statement and have this whole, like, self-actualization thing, because, like, I you know, I feel like that's unsustainable in a way. You can't always like make an entire project every time something, like, bothers you or
really makes you feel something.
Makes you feel something.
Yeah, I think, like, saying that that's unsustainable is actually kind of bold, because I know that some people might disagree, but I think you're right.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to, like, live, like,
yeah,
live
sometimes I remember you saying that after you had put out the album, I was like, I knew that it was kind of a shitty question to ask, but I was kind of like, well, what's next? And you were like, no, now I get to just live. Yeah. Like, now I get to live knowing that I put that out.
You were like, oh yeah, you'll just absorb things. Like, you'll just absorb whatever, and then for the next project, I'll be there to, like, take from.
Yeah, it was definitely time to live experiences, absorb it, reflect on it, and then eventually it'll be time, but you never know when that'll be. So the album is a folk album, which you can definitely pick up on within a few seconds of listening to it. So was that intentional, and did you want the album to translate in a certain way sonically? Yeah,
I always wanted to make this project that, like, encapsulated what, it's a very weird thing to say, but I always, when you're a musical person, there are sounds that kind of, like, encompass certain things, like, are the essence of, like, certain things that you hear. And I always wanted to make something for the rain, for, like, what I feel the rain, like, sonically, like, sounded like to me.
The rain has such a folk.
Yeah, and I never, because I'm primarily, like, you know, like, lo-fi and, like, alt stuff, but I couldn't do that for this, you know what I mean? It felt weird making anything with a, like, a MIDI piano, which is like electronically. So I did use it, but I always use like instruments that were like very organic sounding, and to me the rain has always just felt like this kind of distant, like waning almost sound, and I think that's why I chose to use so much like folk influence and use so much acoustic and weird effects that were kind of like droning in and out and waning.
That was definitely very cool.
Yeah.
If you listen to the album, those kind of moments stand out and they're fun, and they I don't know, they just definitely add something to the song, like an extra there's some songs that you feel like everything is just right there, but every one of these songs had a lot of layers to it, and you could tell.
Thank you.
I wonder what that, like, both lyrically and sonically. But I would wonder what that would look like, I guess, on like a computer. Sometimes you can see how many layers someone puts into that. It's layered. It's layered for sure. And it's cool that translates, that you can hear that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what do you think the overall theme of the album is? We've touched on, isolation, a period of quietness, just a lot of reflectiveness, and also that really, really strong desire to just, how did you put it?
Let go.
Yeah.
Or like stop and just enjoy things.
Yeah. Look back, enjoy things, and just be, exist. Is that kind of what you think the overall theme of the album is? And also, what kind of person do you think this album would resonate with? Because this episode is meant to be a love letter to them.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I don't really... It's hard to say because the way I ended it didn't really end on like a resolution for anything. Right. Which I think is okay, because like life doesn't have, I think there's barely any moments in life where you have these moments of like, oh, I got it. I think life is all about, it's like, you're very fortunate, and I think I'm very fortunate because I realized it more like helped me work through things. And for the people listening to it, I think it's almost like a warning, if that makes sense. Like they'll be like, oh, I don't want my life to be like this like hazy kind of like thing forever, you know what I mean? Because the rain is nice, it's beautiful, but like, could you honestly say you want that as your entire like existence? Like probably not. Like you need sunny days, you need days where you're hanging out with people, where you're experiencing things. So I think it would be like, like slow down, enjoy these things while they last. Like maybe, don't feel pressured to like live up to this thing that everyone else is doing, especially during your young adulthood, but also like know that like this isn't forever. Like you don't want this to be how you perceive the world and how the world around you is, even as beautiful as it is, and it's melancholy. It's like you don't want that forever.
Yeah, as beautiful as that is, exactly. You don't want that. That's not sustainable. Yeah. You don't want that to last a lifetime, even if eventually it becomes comfortable.
Right.
But I guess, so that's like kind of really beautiful advice, and that is a really great takeaway, even though the album doesn't have a resolution. But I guess what I would say to someone who your album resonates with would be, I got like this really great piece of advice when I was a junior in high school, and I had a religion teacher, and he kind of told us, we had like a class that was about grief, and he had told us that whether this applies to grief or whether it just applies to everyday life, he had said that it was important to understand that we mimic nature, and that as people we go through seasons. And as comfortable as winter can be, it can't last forever. Yeah. It shouldn't, because especially not here, it can't last forever, because then you don't get to experience the rebirth that's like spring and summer, and you don't get to experience when things start to go kind of downhill in the fall. I mean, that's not how I see the fall, but I'm just saying.
No, I love that, because I think, like I said, I think life is just learning how to let go of one experience after the other. Because I think even with something as simple as high school, it's like by the time you understand how that works, or by the time you understand how anything works, and any system or institution you get put in works, it's like, oh, it's over. Like,
exactly.
You had no chance to kind of utilize your understanding of that. So I think that's all. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
Yeah. And I think also understanding, and like you have been saying that it's really important to kind of be able to let go and exist, but I think it's also important, to do that in the sense of understanding that like the seasons are inevitable. Like that change as much as you want it to stay summer, as much as you want it to stay fall, it's always going to be winter again. Like, it's always going to be summer again, though. And that's, like, hopeful, you know?
And you can't chase, you can't rush it. You can't rush it, and you can't chase it, though, because I feel, this is kind of off topic, but the entirety of our, like, modern culture, we're always chasing that, like, consistent feeling. Like, we want to be happy 24/7 all the time, which is understandable. Like, nobody wants to be sad, but
of course
you can't, it's inevitable. And I think we need to focus on almost like basking in those moments when we can, and
yes.
be like, this is what it means to exist. It's hard, it sucks sometimes.
Yeah, and like, I guess sometimes it can feel like we're gonna be experiencing this like forever winter, this eternal winter, but in reality, even that can't last forever, and like, you beginning again is inevitable,
right,
even if it doesn't feel that way. So I think that's something hopeful that maybe anybody who relates to the album or who relates to the episode topic can maybe take away with them from this. So to kind of start closing us off, I do want to discuss certain songs. I've pulled out some lyrics, and so like I said, I Love the Rain has 5 songs, including the intro, and I've picked out a few lines from some tracks that I think might resonate with listeners. So track 4 is titled The Secret of Ordinary People. Do you want to tell us anything about that song?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I actually got it from an Adventure Time quote, which is really fun.
Really?
Yeah. But it kind of just stood out to me because I had always felt that, I don't know really what it is, and this isn't like too much, but I feel like there's a level of like self-awareness that like kind of not prohibits me, but like is to my own detriment a lot of the time.
Oh, definitely.
And that I can't like integrate as smoothly as I want to like everyday interactions and things. I don't know why that is. I don't really know why, but that kind of whole entire, especially in college, where the whole point everyone tells you is like make friends, like to make connections. Mm-hmm. It was something I had almost like kind of begun to like disdain like human interaction and connection, and I couldn't really understand it at that point, and when I was writing it, and it didn't make sense to me, and I didn't understand like all the formalities of it, and I was just like I don't need this, but in a bad way. Like it was almost like a like a coping mechanism. Like I'm so isolated that like I'd rather be like this other thing that isn't like ordinary, but it's like kind of out of ignorance almost. Yeah, and also out of a part of me wishes I could be that, but I feel that I never will be. So I am gonna read a portion of that song, of these lyrics to you. Okay. I see you fit perfectly into place. I try so hard to connect all the dots, and I try so hard to be anybody else. And when I try to find the words, I always seem to fall a little flat. And when I try to feel that way, I'm always scared I might never come back. So tell me all your secrets. There's a lot to unpack here. But I love that song and the whole album, really. It feels like a stream of consciousness, and there's something really honest about that that I like. And it like every song flows into the next one. Thank you. In a really great way, of course. And so I have to ask, do you still deeply resonate with this song? And if so, do you think that you always will? Yeah. I don't know as deeply as I did when I wrote it, but I think there is always an air of it's very hard for me to be like familiarized with people that I'm not like immediately kind of clicked with, or that I feel there's a sense of like greater obligation, or like sense of this person wants to make something of whatever they're doing with their lives. And when I wrote that, it was more about just like general connection, like even just having like people to talk to, or like having a group, which was something I was very unused to for like a long period of time. And to me, like it is both like a good thing, because I feel like I have gotten to the point where I'm definitely okay being alone like a lot of the time. Yeah. Like I think there are a lot of people who they need a not even like a person, just like a body to like look like, oh, I'm not alone, because that's our nature. We need to be like social. But I also feel like especially in when I wrote that, there's parts where you can dive too deep into that and you kind of lose something that makes you like human almost. Because I remember just sitting after I made the entire city. I remember just sitting like in the city and like walking around here, and I would just observe like people I didn't even know, and it was like very cathartic to watch that, like, you know, this is not just like these random people, but this is just us as humanity. Like, this is how we can be together, and even if I'm not like a part of it, like you can find the beauty in it without it having to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So to kind of finish us off here, I want to talk about my personal favorite song on the album. It's called Through the Mist. My favorite lines are, "And I can't imagine where you've been, what you've seen, who you'll be in the span of a couple weeks. And I can't imagine where you'll be when you're not with me, running free in your brand new life now." So I think that this part of what it's like to grieve somebody who was there before but isn't now, who you knew so well but now you don't, I've never seen it put into words quite so perfectly. And I think that's, I don't know, it literally the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that's great. So you're welcome. So what can you tell us about these lines and maybe this song as a whole?
I think it's like a song about kind of the dangerous ideology we go through, especially when we're separated from someone that we care about so deeply, where you do have a sense of like, I do want to know what this person is doing. You kind of want, because you are so used to being connected and attached to this person's life, almost like, you know, it is your life. But it can be a really like bad mindset to follow, because like the main theme of letting go, it inevitably like stops you from your own life. It pauses everything you're doing because you're so focused on whatever another person may be going through or may be finding. And I think that's another thing that I had to struggle with, was like the idea that people's lives continue without me. And I think that is like a thing that a lot of people, they're very okay with, I think, like, which is good, like, I think, but it's definitely something I struggle with, because I know I have a very hard time of like being like keeping distant friends and coming back to them, because it's very hard for me to acknowledge that like
life went on when
like
you weren't
these people
there.
Like I was not as vital to this person's like existence as I thought, and that like they do have the capability to just kind of not have me. And I think it was kind of written as like a just in that like that schema of like, what is this person doing? Like I wonder, like just wondering like, what is life without me like afterwards?
Yeah. And I think like it can be really hard, especially when you mentioned like, you know, coming back into someone's life who you know, when they were such a big part of your life, and you kind of hoped that you were such an integral part of theirs. But then when you kind of reconnect with someone like that, finding out that they are either A, completely different person, or B, didn't necessarily break down, or they weren't affected in the same way that you were affected.
Yeah.
That can hurt.
No, it's heartbreaking. It's also terrifying, because it's like a wake up that like, oh, like people don't, because especially with you, I feel like we're very like perceptive people, and it's like, oh, people just don't care sometimes, like, and that's hard. That's horrifying.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand that, and I don't even understand it right now, but like the idea that sometimes people they don't care as much as you care. And sometimes in a friendship or a relationship, that's an assumption. You assume that, okay, you know, the other person cares just as much as I do, but that's not always the case.
It's not guaranteed, which is scary.
So, to kind of close us off here, if you were to write an album about the point you're currently at in life, what do you think the theme would be? How would it sound sonically? And the $1 million question, what kind of person do you think that album might resonate with?
For like a new album?
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually like working on stuff right now, and I would feel, the thing is, it's very hard to say, because I have like brief flashes of like, this is what I definitely want, or like, this is the theme I want.
Right.
I think it would be right now like a mix. I actually thought about this a little, like, it'd be a mix of, I think I want to have in whatever I make next, this duality of like urgency, of like, I can make stuff even to just like to feel like I have to make a point, or like to feel like I have to create some kind of abstract idea for people to resonate with. but I can also make things just to make things, just for the beauty of them, and just to be proud that like I'm even able to use my, like, whatever you want to call it, like creativity, to like channel into this medium, because like both are good. Like I've had mixed, like reactions.
Experiences with both, yeah.
So I want to have like a certain kind of like duality of, I want to tell a story also of like whatever I go through with this, to kind of like as a broader picture for upcoming things anyway.
Yeah. Oh, very, very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And even if you don't put out the stuff that you're working on now, I think it's really great that you're just creating.
Thank you. Yeah.
And even like the word just didn't even belong in that sentence, because creating is great. Yeah. It's important. It's, vital. But okay, so that concludes Love Letters' very first real episode. That's and our first true interview. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for agreeing to join me, and I've genuinely enjoyed chatting with you today. So yeah, I'll be seeing you all next Thursday at 12 here on Paws Radio. Anything you want to say?
Thank you, Annabelle, for the opportunity to just come and yap and just be obnoxious intellectuals. But also thank you, Paws Radio, and everyone who works on it.
Thank you, Maci.
Maci, you're here. Yeah, I had so much fun. I love talking about all this stuff. And I also have a show, but I won't talk about it. But thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.